Awesemo odds. Here we go. Yeah, we're good. Welcome. Good afternoon, morning, wherever you may be on the planet. Get ready to win some money. We welcome you back to the Awesemo Betting Show on the Awesemo Odds channel. Myself, Mr. Ben Rasa, the man who makes everything work here on channel. We appreciate all of you out there as we now have a push to 5K. We hit 2K, but much like the sports we celebrate, there's no room midweek to look back at what you've done. On to the next game, on to the next film, on to the next accomplishment, which is 5K. I hope you're okay with that. Not 3K, not 4K. I'm setting the bar at 5K for the next milestone, Ben.
Yeah, that's fine. 10K, why not 10K? But you know what? 5K, yeah. Let's go for it. Absolutely. On to Cincinnati style. We are looking forward. We got a lot going on here. It's Thursday night football. It's great. You know, you look forward to this all week. You get a couple of days off. We've had football. Not going to lie. The action has been keeping me entertained. But we get the big boys tonight. Thursday night, big time spread. But honestly, for a 10.5 point dog, I really do. I'm not just saying this. Feels like a game that has a lot more intrigue than most potential blowouts.
I agree. Where this may not be the game that you look at on the slate and say, I can't wait to sit down and watch this across the board Thursday through Monday night. But to your point, I think there's a lot of sneaky value here. And there's also a great opportunity for live betting, especially as we've seen with these Thursday night games needing a little bit of a jump start, if you will, to get going.
They definitely are sluggish in nature. It's not surprisingly, it's a true quick turnaround we've seen this year after year. And it's just a fascinating matchup in the sense of where these teams are at. I mean, the Jets, the only real argument with them is how bad are they? But lately, they have knocked off what I think will be two playoff teams in the AFC, in the Titans and the Bengals. So clearly, there's a little more to that story. And then you've got an Indianapolis team that they show signs, and then Carson Wentz at the most inopportune time makes some plays that he seemingly can't get out of his own way. A huge loss to Tennessee. They go home. It's hard to wonder where they're at. They obviously have to have this game.
Yeah, I agree, especially with what's happened with Derrick Henry out and a pathway to winning this division, or at least competing for this division over the next 6 to 8 weeks. The total sits at 46. You mentioned 10.5. This was not always 10.5. That hook has arrived on this game. It was 10 at one point, and even that half point, I think, makes it so much more manageable. I jumped in initially at -10. And I feel like this is the first time in a while on Thursday night that I have a side here on the game without diving directly into my go-to, which is the first half total. I'll explain where I am a little more, but I'm curious, when you start things off for us tonight, again, hit us up. I know Bloomfield and others already salivating for a play here. John Shelton is coming. I know he was on the show I was just doing, Ben, but we remind everybody not only hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, but also leave us with a lock it up. We're going to leave you with a lock it up play. We're going to go shopping. We're going to hit some college as well. Where to begin, though, on a side or total with you tonight?
Yeah, so where are we at? We're at 10.5, over under a 45, which is pretty pedestrian, and that feels about right.
Did that drop a point, by the way?
It did. I saw it a little earlier in the week. I think it was even hovering around 46.5.
It was.
So I get it. I do lean, I think, to the other side. I would take the points here if I could get the hook. 10.5. It's good enough for me. You know, the Jets are just and it's a great unknown. Mike White, who knows? I mean, he's not going to be throwing for 400 yards every game, but he obviously has some talent. He made the offense go. I think more importantly, and what's being overshadowed a little bit, and we're going to talk about it in the player props in depth, but I don't think Michael Carter, I was very impressed. Him and Ty Johnson form a somewhat potent backfield. And I think that everyone is talking about Mike White, and rightfully so. But quietly, I think the emergence of a guy like Michael Carter has changed this offense for the better.
Yeah, I agree. My question is, how much of the running backs are you going to get running the ball tonight? Right? because I agree with you. Ty Johnson throwing the football to Ty Johnson, and we'll talk about this from a player prop standpoint in a minute. But this is where I go back to the game script that we try and build before we even get into a lot of our bets. Yeah, the books are telling us, even with that total, books are telling you, right, that this is going to be a lower scoring, more than, probably like a 13-point victory. Now, the books are wrong, right? They're not always right. But that's what I'm getting. Lower scoring, 10 to 13-point victory by the Colts. And the question remains is, if you buy into that game script, Ben, when is it coming? When is that lead coming? Is this a 7-3 game at the half or a 13-10 game at the half where both Johnson and Turner are involved in this? Or not Turner, sorry. Where both of their backs are involved as far as from a running standpoint? Or are the Colts up and the damage done, Jets throwing for a ton in this game?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I'm taking away from the Cincinnati game is that the Jets weren't leading throughout. The Jets scored first, and then Cincinnati rattled off 17 unanswered, and the Jets were able to take a breath and rally. And I think we saw that, and that's why I kind of like these backs, because they both can catch the ball. Yeah. So I'm not saying that the Jets are going to deploy some type of run-heavy approach or anything like that, but I look at Indianapolis, 27th in passing yards allowed per attempt right now. It's not a super potent defense, particularly on the back end. A total of 45 when you're getting 10.5, the margins shrink. So I'm saying, okay, if the Jets can put up 17 to 21, that might get me there in terms of covering this number. And I think they're going to be able to do that tonight.
So the reason why I jumped on the Colts at -10, and again, the hook, I understand, changes a lot for people and for you as well. I get that. But I felt like two things. One, this is similar to what we saw with the Jets last week, where the Jets were coming off a brutal loss. They were taking on a team in Cincinnati that was coming off a huge high from beating Baltimore, and you could just sense a letdown.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm factoring in here is that Indianapolis, and look, I saw this last week with my Eagles. Now, granted, I had the Lions, but I saw this last week with my Eagles. They're not good enough to take Detroit lightly. They just weren't. The Eagles are a shit show. Indianapolis is not a good football team, and I just think they're not good enough to come into this game on a short week and say, it's only the Jets. People are saying it's only the Colts to them. So that's where my mind was. All right, short week. We've seen offenses, especially road teams, struggle. Mike White, I don't know what to expect here. Colts just aren't good enough to take a team lightly. And the Jets come off they came off a gigantic win against the Bengals. I'm surprised that you didn't smell letdown on this.
Yeah, I get it. I think it's more, the Jets are not a team. I don't think the Jets are good enough to be let down, because they're beating some quality teams, but they're still the Jets. And the Colts, I don't really worry about any of that. They need wins. Listen, they are in the thick of the South, and they're falling fast here. So I'm not worried about anything in terms of that. I think it's just two teams. They'll be ready to play to the best of their abilities on a Thursday. I think it's going to be pretty ugly. I don't think Indianapolis is that good, and I don't think the Jets are that bad. Now, I will say that the Jets, like most teams, they seem to have a lot more success at home. Like, they knocked off both Tennessee and Cincinnati. They were at home in those games. They haven't liked the road nearly as much, but again, it's not perfect. If the Jets were at home, this would be inside a touchdown, in my opinion. So you're getting additional points because of that. You're in the dome. I think Mike White will have opportunities here. Whether he can take advantage, we'll see. But you're definitely right on this regard. The Jets aren't sneaking up on anybody. It's not like they're an elite team, but no one's going to say, oh, this team is a joke. People know that if you're not paying attention, the Jets can clip you.
Absolutely. I will say this. If you can get it at 24 or even 24.5, it's worth going under. But I'm not. Look, I just got burned last weekend on the extra point. I don't leave it to chance at 23.5. I'm still tempted to go under in the first half at 23.5. Earlier in the week, it was 24. I bumped it up to 24.5 and laid 125 on it. Or 130, pardon me, on it, looking at it here. So I'm not adverse to doing that. But honestly, I was even hoping that I could get the first quarter at 10, 10.5, and sneak in under that. But 9.5, 23.5, they're a little sharper than we're used to. And I think it's because these are just two bad teams and the books aren't going to wiggle much. BetMGM is not going to wiggle much on this.
No, I think Thursdays, that narrative has played out, and you do have two struggling teams overall. So I don't really have any interest on the total. If it starts really slow, maybe a live bet on the over, but I'm not really looking to do that. It would have to be a set of unique circumstances. I do think that there are some plays to be made here. And as Chet's pointing out, the Colts have the ability to blow Jets out. There's no doubt about that. I mean, the Colts have weapons. There's just a lot of times where I think the Jets are able to hang in the game. But it's not to say that the Colts at times haven't looked like a legitimate threat to win the South and just a legitimate team in general. They've had some things going. Let's not forget, and I know I'm cherry picking, this team was about to knock off the Rams potentially back in week 2. Like they've shown they can play with the big boys. They just also have shown at times it's hard to say what the problem is because Carson Wentz looks fantastic. And then he makes, I mean, that was one of the worst plays I've ever seen last week when he gave the game away.
Right. The irony in all of this is that if he took the safety, the game was over. So the pick 6 was like Madden mentality where it was just, all right, let's get the ball back.
It was just,
now you know. Now you know what it was like watching him in that final year here.
It was disappointing. I mean, that was a spot that the Colts had everything they could ask for, and they've got weapons. And we're going to, again, you've got guys like Jonathan Taylor, and we can dive into it. I mean, he's becoming a true just monster. They've got other backs. Looks like Marlon Mack, on his way out, and Hines is a change of pace, but Jonathan Taylor's doing everything. He's starting to catch the ball a little. His reception prop is up to 2.5. I know that doesn't seem like much. This is a guy that used to be a flat 0 in the passing game. You add in his big workload on the ground. The Jets got to stop him. That's step number 1. If the Colts can just lean on the ground game, this game's going to be over.
How long do you think, because this is what I'm looking at with 2 guys on the player prop element of it, but I'm curious ahead of time, how long do you think it will take before the Jets really, or pardon me, before the Colts really open this thing up? And look, it could be the difference of it being a 3-point game to a 14 or 17-point game, but how long do you think it will take in this game before the Colts get up to a point where they're hovering, if not covering that pre-flop number?
I hope never would be my answer. But yeah, I mean, listen, the Colts, like most teams, they're at home on the short week. That does help. I think they start, you would think logically, with a pretty conservative game plan, have Carson Wentz not do anything dumb, lean on Jonathan Taylor,
right,
lean on Michael Pittman. If they're successful in doing that, then the pressure is going to go to Mike White, who there's no doubt about it. The guy's got some talent. Anytime you throw for 400 yards in the NFL, you're doing something right. He also has 4 interceptions in his 2 games. So it's not like he's above potentially making some mistakes, even though he's making some good plays. So if Indianapolis can put the pressure on him and force him to not just be checking down and being conservative, that's where I worry for the Jets. If they have to open it up and they're taking shots downfield and the pressure is getting to Mike White, it could be a long, long Thursday night for them.
The reason why I asked that, and your question now clears up a little bit here, is I've seen this at 3.5 juiced significantly to the under, but well over even money. In fact, I've seen Jonathan Taylor, and it's dipped now to 2.5. But I've seen it available at 3.5 at plus money. And I mean, like, plus 120, 130. And that's where I think, yes, you can lock in 2.5, and I think you're golden at that point. But if you wanted to take a risk based on game script and somebody who is at least has the targets, I think there, so long as this game is close, Jonathan Taylor's involved in the passing game.
Yeah, I think the way he's involved is good for game script. They get him, screens and things like that. It's a natural, I guess, flow of their offense. It's not like, oh, they're in hurry up mode and now Jonathan Taylor might catch some garbage passes. They're using him within the confines of their normal offense. And I think they've had a lot of success. I mean, of course, a couple of weeks ago when you see him break, what was that, like an 80-yard touchdown on the, against Baltimore, 76-yard screen pass, obviously that makes you say, well, we got to get this guy involved. But he's really, really responded. He's had 3 or more catches in 4 of his last 5 games. I know it hasn't been a healthy total. It's been 3 in every one, but it's reliable. And that's what I like about him here. I think he's in line for that same kind of workload on the ground. And when you look at that, lot to like potentially.
So I see a couple of college plays. Don't worry. On Thursday's show, we go and hit you with a college football rapid fire. Shelton, Greg, SJ1. Just keep hitting us with your lock it ups and trust on Thursday, at least, that we have allotted some time for that. And you see Odd Shopper. We'll go shopping specifically, but as Mike here, Awesemo, producing the show, look at that. Gets a wrench, too. So now we're in business here. But
moving up in the world.
You can see in the background here, building off of what we have on Odd Shopper, where everything is done for you. All of the data that we have on Awesemo aggregated here for you for the best and also highest ROI that you can search through. So one that all right. So again, keep an eye on Taylor as far as the receptions made. I also think that there's some value and look, I'm going to save one that is a market that we've talked a lot about that has caught up to us that I think now has some maneuverability with Mike White. And I know you know where I'm going. But before that, Mo Alley Cox is plus 120 for 2.5 receptions over. He did not catch a football last week, but was targeted 4 times. He's been targeted at least 3 times in each of his last 5 games and has gone over 3 targets in 3 of his last 5 games. I'm going to get targets. I know I'm going to get targets. It is a risk. I understand that it's also a risk. But at 2.5, knowing that I have at least 3 to 3.5 built-in targets, I think that's a risk worth taking tonight. And I'm actually going to play that bet. I don't care what you'd say to talk me out of it.
I'm not going to talk you out of it. It's not on my card. I think that Mo Alley Cox is maybe like a against the grain first touchdown scorer at 10-1. He's a guy that he's obviously, they say it every time, former VCU basketball player. He's got the size, certainly a pretty good player at this point in his career. So I don't mind it. It feels about right to me in terms of the receptions prop. So for me, I'd rather go Jonathan Taylor if I was going to that route in terms of someone to catch some balls.
You don't have to pick one or the other now. Just because you're locked into a Jonathan Taylor prop doesn't mean that you can't play mine as well.
That's true. But if I start to add a couple, then you're starting to say that you're devolving the game script a little bit and saying Carson Wentz really is going to be throwing the ball, because I like Michael Pittman tonight. I think that he is primed to have a good game. He's clearly the alpha on this team. So if you add him in, you've got Taylor contributing, you got Mo Alley Cox contributing. Carson Wentz is starting to rack up the totals there, and I'm not sure he does that tonight.
Yeah, I understand that. Let's see how many times he threw. 51 times last game. I'm trying to. What's the game that we have with Carson Wentz with the least amount of throws? That might be an indicator where if you look at his game log, the game that, and I have it up here now. He had 20 attempts. See, he was 11 of 20 in that Houston game. That's probably closest, unfortunately for Ben, 31-3, the result there. But that's right. But that's probably closest to what we're going to get, where, you're going to be low 20s attempts. And then from there, how much can you get? Now, T.Y. Hilton was back in that game. We know he's out here. He had 4 of Carson Wentz's 11 completions. So that's another thing. Not that T.Y. Hilton is the guy. It's Michael Pittman, as you mentioned. But Mo Alley Cox had, 3 targets that game where he only threw the ball 20 times.
I mean, it's not like it can't happen. You're just shrinking your margins for sure. Like,
correct.
That's simple as that.
Correct. Look, if I can get 4 targets removed from Hilton, Pittman is most likely going to be the heaviest targeted guy. My point being is that Mo Alley Cox, the reason why I bring this up is because I think, and look, I'll leave it at this. This is not going to turn into the Mo Alley Cox show, I promise. But I think where I look at this number, Ben, and I'm appealing to you. You know about what this is and how these lines move and how these books set up things ahead of time better than me. But this looked like a number that was more reflective of catches than targets, if that makes sense, which is why I jumped on the over. Because
Yeah,
he's
I
not a
think
guy
that's
that, sorry.
no. I think that's a very sharp way to analyze that. Just take it one step further. Like Robbie Anderson, he gets a lot of targets, but he rarely catches them. And there's a multitude of reasons, but one of them, they're very aggressive, deep targets. Mo Alley Cox is not trying to catch like 60-yard bombs. Most of these are pretty reasonable targets that he should convert at a high clip. It's not Jonathan Taylor levels, where
Right.
basically a target is a reception because they're screen passes. But I'm with you there. If Mo Alley Cox continues to get 4 or 5 targets, he should be converting certainly more than 50% of them into actual receptions.
Ty Johnson, I see on the chat. He's a guy I was looking at. I know Odd Shopper is all over Ty Johnson as well. Carrie Witt, we appreciate you and everyone else here following along on the Awesemo Betting Show and the Awesemo Odds channel. Carrie asking, what do you think of Ty Johnson? Do you have anything with Ty Johnson outside of what we talked about?
So Ty Johnson, obviously, they're forming I know it sounds kind of silly, but I think a pretty reasonable 1-2 punch in this backfield. They both can do a little of both. Right now, Michael Carter certainly seems like he is the predominant lead back in terms of carries. He had 15 carries to Ty Johnson's 5, but they both are catching a ton of balls. Michael Carter had 14 targets and turned them into 9 receptions, but that didn't mean that Ty Johnson couldn't coexist. He had 6 targets and turned them into 5 receptions. Again, when you're talking about running back targets, they're so highly convertible. You don't need 10 targets to convert. If you get 6 targets, you might have 6 receptions for a guy like Ty Johnson tonight. So his receptions prop is also 2.5. It's very juiced to the over, and that's my predominant hesitation. But I do think Ty Johnson will have a pretty sizable role in general. I expect 5+ touches on the ground and a handful of targets.
All right, my friend. One more, or actually one more from me, however many more player props you have. Is there anything else you were looking at, from a longest reception to multi-touchdown score or anything in between?
So one guy I want to throw out there is Michael Pittman. I think that this guy is primed just for another big game. I like his over on yards at 67.5. Last 2 games, he had 4 catches against San Francisco, but they were for 105 yards. So he's, downfield. And then he just had a volume game against Tennessee. He had 10 catches for 86 yards. Both ways will get it done. He's the clear go-to guy for Carson Wentz. I just think he's a actual legitimate top end receiver. And when I just look at his prop, I'm not sure he's kind of viewed that way across the lines here. So in a game that, again, I don't think Indy's going to be trailing. That would be pretty shocking. But I still think that Michael Pittman's going to get a healthy amount of this targets. And then you look at Carson Wentz, he's projected, according to Vegas, 244.5 passing yards. I'm saying that I think someone like Pittman can get a third of that. That's what you would need, basically. I'm comfortable with that. And if Wentz pushes over, I have a lot more room. So give me Michael Pittman tonight over on his receiving yards.
I like that a lot. And again, he's going to be the main guy, unless Taylor breaks one, which is definitely possible. But between Pittman and Taylor, and I would use that order, that's where the damage gets done. I mean, this game is 17-3 going into the half, and the Colts are taking their foot off the gas. The highest probability of them getting to 17 points is because of Michael Pittman, especially against this Jets defense, wouldn't you think, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have Jonathan Taylor, who is a very legitimate top end back, but I don't think that they're just going to run it down the Jets. The Jets have been fine against the rush. They're 7th in the league, 4 yards allowed per carry. That's very respectable. I think that they're going to have to make some plays, but Michael Pittman is a player. He's just a very, very good wide receiver. He's got the volume. He's shown that it's not just volume. He's got 3 catches north of 40 yards already this year and another 38-yarder. I mean, you get one of those, you've cut his yardage prop in half already. Now he just needs some dink and dunks and you're there. So I think that Michael Pittman has a lot of opportunity tonight to put up an effective line. I like him for showdown, and I like him in the betting markets.
Plus 450, 2 or more touchdowns.
Yeah, I think that would take, if you like something like that, I think you need something to happen for the Jets or some type of turnover, just because I don't know how often the volume is going to allow for even Wentz to throw more than a couple touchdowns. So he's either going to have to get all of them or you're going to need some type of game that's maybe a little higher scoring than we anticipate.
Yeah, or he goes 4 for 4 over 100 and a score.
Yeah, he did do that in the hurricane against
Yes.
the Niners.
All right, let me leave you with this one player prop here. We'll keep it moving and go shopping, do some college football rapid fire, more lock it ups as we see here, both in the chat and for the ones that we have as well. All right, we've seen this market dry up because we've been so far ahead of it. I'd like to think that BetMGM, where you can use $10, bet that. We're going to give you 3 free months of Awesemo Plus Platinum. We also have a link below that's going to get you a risk-free bet up to $1,000. So we have you taken care of and then some at BetMGM. But it's the rushing yards for quarterbacks. And just look at Carson Wentz. A month ago, 3 weeks ago, that line is 6.5, maybe 5.5 for Carson Wentz. Look how much it's caught up because we've seen these guys who have the perception of not running run enough to burn the books on the overplays. Well, what happens when you have a quarterback that's brand new, that has only played 1 week? You treat him like BetMGM and others have treated him, and I sent you the screen cap. I got him at 3.5, an hour ago. He's up to 4.5 right now. I wouldn't wait. Hit the over. How rare do you see me ever or hear me say this word outside of the thumbs up button? Pound over 4.5 for Mike White. Ben, this reminds me of the earlier market for quarterback rushing props that has since dried up because they just don't have enough yet on White.
So I have no idea if this guy can move. That's my only hesitation. I get what you're saying. He has shown zero ability so far to move at all. He had -1 rushing yards last week. If you think that so 2 parts. One, I think, is in your favor. He seems willing to run. He had 5 attempts. I don't know if he can run, though. His long was 2. So
right.
That's a little freaky.
He's not a slob.
I mean, he seems like he'd be able to run.
Right.
I don't know why he wouldn't. And when you're not expected to run, if they design even one play for him, he's going over in that play. So I get it. If you have a big player prop card tonight, I think that can be an addition, but I certainly think there's a lot more projectable because he's a great unknown. We really don't know a ton about Mike White just yet.
I'm just telling you, man, it seemed more like you're right on the specifics of it. Here's one thing before we get to Nick Angel's super chat, and thank you, Nick. The one thing that I feel confident in too, Ben, is that be at the end of the first half or the end of the game, there ain't no way in hell Mike White is kneeling the football.
It's probably true.
So I have
you would have said that last week, though, too.
Yes, although I didn't see what his player yes, to be fair, in hindsight, yes, looking back through the rear view mirror, I would have gotten burned on Mike White's rushing prop last week. You're right. All right,
but,
Nick, yes.
But I agree with you. I do.
Mike, awesome, Mike. Mike White is not a slob. Yes, I said that. He's not a slob. He looks like he can. I'm a slob. Don't take the over on my rushing props. That's what I would say. Nick Angel, what's up, guys, on the super chat? Don't know if he missed this. Was at work. Thoughts on Michael Carter? Anytime TD at +140. It's at I'm actually surprised, Ben, for a guy who has the volume, especially in scoring scenarios, assuming the Jets get in there, that he's at plus money. I thought he would be around, -110 or so.
So a couple different things. I think you're spot on with the guy. There are better numbers out there. I'm staring at my screen at +165. So if you have the ability to maybe shop around and look, BetMGM has +165, and that's obviously a better number. I think this is more a indictment on the potential just anemic output of the Jets. Yeah. But if the Jets are able to put up any type of offense, Michael Carter should be the guy involved. He's shown that, okay, if for some reason they're in the game and they win the game, it's hard to think he doesn't score. If they don't, he's not coming off the field either. He had 14 targets last week. So it's not like you can't get a receptions touchdown from him or receiving touchdown. I like it for that aspect in the sense that any game script, Michael Carter will still be involved. So you're not dead if the Jets fall behind. If you can find that +150 or better, I think there's no problem with having that. I think he's the most likely scorer on the entire Jets team.
All right. let's hit it now as we go from player props to going shopping specifically. And we can talk about tonight, although there are a bunch of other ones here. When you look at player props, and again, we talk about this all the time. For me, I use Odd Shopper. Everything I do is Odd Shopper first and foremost. I can go to Pennsylvania where I am. I can sort by a bunch of different options, including expected ROI and expected win. Ty Johnson, all the way up there. The one that I saw that has the second highest projected win total across the board for a player prop this weekend, under 44.5 rushing yards for Boston Scott of the Philadelphia Eagles against the Chargers.
There you go. Yeah, that game is going to be weird. Not to the Eagles with Jordan Howard getting in the mix. It's a giant mess because you've got multiple backs and Jalen Hurts. I have no issues with trying to short any of that situation just because it's a great unknown. And looking at Odd Shopper for tonight, we've talked about some of these guys, and I think that, the Jets backs have ample opportunities. Jonathan Taylor's receptions and receiving yards is very positive. We lean over, and I think for good reason, because Carson Wentz should be willing to check down to him, give him safe, reliable throws. So there's a lot to look like and a lot to like on this game tonight, even if it is a pretty large spread.
Yeah, the large spread doesn't impact that enough for you, though, right?
No, I'm not. I'm
Okay.
not concerned about it just because it's a 45-point total. I don't see that many scenarios where it's just like a demolition. I'm not saying the Colts can't do that to them. We've seen the Jets lose control of games, but I think more often than not, the Colts just beat them because they're better, but it's a very respectable Thursday night game.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? The game itself. Okay. Now, more so beyond this specifically with the player props, did you look at anything else? Because you brought this up last week, and that's why I looked at the Boston Scott thing just smack in my face. Is I wouldn't have even thought to look at that specific market and play that specific market. But here's Odd Shopper through our own data on Awesemo pulling something and saying, hey, smacking me in the face and saying, hey, you might want to play this Boston Scott prop.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I say the same thing every time, and I believe very strongly. You're saving an immense amount of time, and time is everything when you're talking about bets. You can go to Odd Shopper, and in a couple seconds, you can get an indication of where we're leaning. And then on your own time, you can dig into them. You can cross some off. You can add some. You can search by a player that you want. So if you say, you know what, I like Michael Carter tonight, you search for Michael Carter, and you're going to get every prop and what we think. And then you're free to make, of course, your own decisions. But it saves so much time rather than having to accumulate that data on your own. So it's something to at least take advantage of and incorporate into your DFS builds. I know we're going to be talking about this on the show tonight, me, Alex, and Lofty, because it's a very important piece of that puzzle as well.
It's amazing. Everything interacts with it. I'm telling you, I use DFS projections we have and rankings that we have to go with player props, Odd Shopper. You have so much available to you that you can't overthink this. And that's the thing. You out there, not just Ben, we collectively, we have some basic understanding of what's going on in the football game. So between your understanding of a game, everything that you have available to you as far as data on Awesemo, then you have the aggregate of Odd Shopper. This really is, and again, you can't overdo it. You just have to show up to your computer at this point. It's great. I use the projections a ton.
No, it's a great tool. There's no doubt you want to check it out. And again, if you are new to the channel, first of all, welcome, hopping in. You want to hit that subscribe button and the like button, because we're going to have plenty of content talking about Odd Shopper and all the tools and all the edges that we have here at Awesemo Odds.
All right, my friend, college football. We've got a bunch of lock it ups I see on the chat. I want to make sure that I get everybody's involved here. Bloomfield, Shelton, Greg, SJ1 are our usual suspects when it comes to it. Let's bang through what the chat has. I have one to think about, and then, of course, you always balance this out for us. But Purdue outright, very short line for Purdue hosting Michigan State. I don't get it, and I haven't gotten it. Michigan State is like one of the most disrespected teams when it comes to these points, right? So Are you making a play on that? I would not make a play just because that line is too short, but I don't know if you've looked at that.
So I have looked at it. Certainly the Betting You podcast, which is out every Wednesday night, me and Matt Kajeski, we get into all the games, and we certainly got into this one. And he brought up that Michigan State does have some distinct advantages, particularly up front. Kenneth Walker, the two alphas on the outside. And how many times has Michigan State been in this exact situation, from Indiana to Northwestern at the beginning of the year, to Rutgers, to the Michigan game? They really don't get a ton of respect. It's not a great spot. I think Purdue's playing a little better, and they are at home. Michigan State's coming off, talk about an emotional win, arch rival down 16, and they win the game, but they have shown they're kind of built to respond. So I'm not back in Purdue. That's for sure. It would be Michigan State or pass. It's a tough spot. I get it. You know, the home dog is live. There's no doubt about it, but Michigan State is just a team that for some reason is able to survive and advance.
Real quick, I don't know if you answered. Oh, I guess you did answer this on the chat. But I did see this now, and I apologize, Dan Frumer, who asked a very legit question about the game tonight. First quarter total, 7.5. If it dips to 7, is it worth hitting the over? I would say that if you get an even number at 7 in the first quarter, just play it. The likelihood of the push happening is better than any other number you'll get, including 3 and 10.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a surprising number. I don't think it's going to get to 7. That would take a tremendous move. Like, when you're talking about a first quarter, that half point is infinitely important.
Humongous.
But it's a great spot by him just to identify 7.5 out there. So, you know, keep an eye on it. And I totally think that's sound judgment.
We had it at 9.5.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh my God. Look, 7.5, I get it, but I would still, even though it's at 9.5 where we have it at BetMGM, I still would stay away from 7.5 because you're right. I just think that you're compelled. If you have a play on the first quarter total and it's at 7, worst cases you push it. Now I know worst cases you lose the bet, but
no, I know what you mean. And it's pretty binary at that point. The chances in a first quarter that 7.5 and 9.5 are going to be different is really minimal. How the hell are they combining for 8 points in one quarter? That just seems your best shot there would be a missed extra point and a field goal, and it's 9-0. That's the only way that would matter. So 7.5 to 9.5, honestly, is not that different in a first quarter.
Shelton is locking up Stanford +9 primetime dog tomorrow night.
Yeah, that one's, you got to keep an eye on that. Stanford's really banged up. They got serious issues at their quarterback position. They got all sorts of guys walking wounded. So that's a little scary just because I don't know what they have left at this point.
Also, it should be mentioned here, Shelton is riding with me on the Mike White rushing. Keep firing. I love it.
Keep firing. That's the motto of this show.
It's just keep reloading and keep firing. All right. So I'm going to hit you with one just because I want to see, and I'm already locked in. The ticket has been punched. I punched it 2 times over, but I want to see your reaction when I tell you that Saturday, November 6th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, it's already dropped a half a point.
11:30.
I got Army at +3 against Air Force in what will be a game that sets offense in college football back 100 years.
It'll be, so the game starts at 11:30, which is hilarious in itself. It'll probably be over by like 1:45 because these teams don't throw. There might only be a couple passes in the home game. The over-under is 37. It's 2 academy teams playing. That's always very freaky and very difficult.
37 is the total, sir, not 47.
Yeah. Oh, did I say 47? Yeah, 30.
Yes.
37 is the total. It's very, very low. Both of these teams take like 10-minute drives. Strength and honor to you. I want nothing to do with those teams. I've bet both of them at several points this year. Very, very outrageous game.
Army's due to paying us back. They've screwed us a couple of times over. They're due, by all means. All right, my friend, what are you looking at in college? We'll lock it up before we get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly we've had a couple people mention Wake Forest and UNC. The total 76.5 doesn't seem high enough, honestly. Wake Forest, speaking of Army, Wake Forest scored 70 points in that game against Army, but they gave up 56. They play extremely fast. North Carolina plays fast. They've got Sam Howell, who you're going to be seeing very early on draft day next year. that's going to be just a lot of points. So I like that. I also think that for as good as Nebraska has done at keeping it close, they're 3-6, but they haven't lost a game by more than 8 points. I think this could be the week where that goes by the wayside. Ohio State comes in to Lincoln. I just don't know how they're going to slow down Ohio State, who has put up basically 40 or 50 points in every game since they've hit this win streak after the Oregon game. Nebraska's got some things to cause problems, but when you've got TreVeyon Henderson, Stroud is playing out of his mind, and probably two of the best, X amount of receivers in the country, I have a feeling just talent wins out there. I laid the points. I know it's just north of 2 touchdowns. I laid the 14.5 with Ohio State this week.
I like that. I think that people are going to be concerned or maybe stay away entirely because they couldn't cover that large number against Penn State last week. And I think people are also waiting for chaos. They're waiting for Ohio State to lose this game, or they're waiting for Michigan State to lose that game. They're not. No, they're not.
They're playing at they had a bad loss. Oregon's a fine team, but that was a bad loss at home. Ohio State is playing really well right now. I wouldn't want to see them anytime soon on my schedule.
By no means. Something to think about before we get out of here. I'm going to tell you to lock this up here.
Okay.
And you're going to lock it up as well. Just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything else. Jay Hill, Jonathan Taylor, 114 receiving and rushing yards. I actually like that. I saw you respond that you lean under that. That seems, now to be fair, it seems on the surface without looking at it, a pretty sharp number.
Yeah.
But the likelihood of him hitting 80 to 90 on one play, he could hit 75 on either one of those categories.
I mean, there's no doubt the guy's explosive. It's just, I don't think that the Colts are going to have a ton of success running the ball. I'm not saying you can't run the ball on the Jets. I just think it might be a pedestrian output where he has around his prop number, 75-ish rushing yards, and he's going to need a lot in the passing game. To me, it's a pretty fair number. I just think that guys like Pittman and some of the other contributors in a sluggish game garner enough that keeps Jonathan Taylor from just having an average game, not an explosive one.
I did see one NBA play here. Chris G, Boston, the Celtics.
No. The Celtics are on the list for me because of that game the other night. When they did the impossible, they did not have a defensive rebound in the fourth quarter. And that is something I have never heard of before, and I don't think I'll ever hear of it again.
I don't want any part of Boston to. First off, that is a ridiculous circumstance right there to not have a defensive rebound in an entire quarter. But the problem with Boston, this is an overplay. If you wanted to play this game, play the over. Miami, yes, they're a great defensive team, but they score number 2, at least, depending on what happened last night across the board, in offensive efficiency and scoring. The Celtics score a lot, but they give up, to your point. They give up points left and right. They're one of the worst teams in the NBA in opponents' points per game. Miami is legit. So I don't know why.
Miami's great.
Yeah, Miami is one of the best. Bam Adebayo, I have a Joel Embiid here. Bam Adebayo has an argument now being a top 3 center in the NBA.
I mean, I still believe in Boston. I think they got a lot of talent. It's not working right now, right? So probably not.
We love you for the lock it up. And just because I or Ben give a lock it up doesn't mean that you have to play it either.
Certainly not.
All
Certainly
right.
not.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. This is a dicey play here but the line was short as is. I jumped in ahead of time before the Ruggs news came down. I don't have a problem with the Raiders on the road in New York laying 3. Completely different set of circumstances, Ben, as far as the why, but the what remains the same, which is the Raiders have already shown that they can play without whatever's happening off the field impact them, right to losing a head coach. So I think what's going to happen is, the Raiders, they're disheveled and all this with Ruggs. No. That's why Ruggs was released so quickly. This is a play for me. I'm locking it up. I've already locked it up. The Giants are a different team at home than they are on the road. I'll take the Raiders -3. Lock it up.
I have no problem with that. I mean, we've seen, who the hell knows? We saw the Raiders go into Denver after Gruden was let go, and they look just fine. And, you know, if they can find they've got other receivers, obviously. So I do think they'll be ready to go.
Waller's back. Jacobs is back.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't have a play on that game right now. And I don't know, I'll be honest, if I will. But it's clear that, you know, we don't really know exactly. The Giants at home, I do think help. So all these teams at home, it does help. But still, Raiders have shown they can go to the East Coast and play just fine. I don't mind that. It's certainly something we'll be talking about as we get closer to Sunday. But for me, I've already talked about this. I think that Michael Pittman is really in line for a good game. I like the over in his yardage. We just had a question from Michael saying anytime touchdown scores, I think Michael Pittman is a good one. I think they're going to look to him in any type of game script. He could get the scoring going. He could be someone if for some reason they're trailing. Michael Pittman tonight, pretty solid output.
Don't you want to just, if you're playing Pittman anytime, don't you just play him at 450, even if it's a quarter to a half a unit for like the likelihood of him scoring 2 touchdowns, I would think is better than anybody, including Pittman. Including Taylor.
Again, I don't mind that. The problem is more that it's a 45-point total. And I think there's a very real chance there's just not that many touchdowns in the game. So
got it.
I get it. See, now we got, look at this. Bam, over 10.5 rebounds. Definitely very interesting. And then we got Caps tonight. Okay.
Caps plus 120 on the money line against the
Writing
Panthers.
It all down.
Burger, Florida 8-0-1 and due for a loss. And then I saw, look at that. See, I give you props even when we're not working together. John Shelton, need to hear these Ben golf plays. Shander giving some praise on his other show. Amazing. All right, we're out of here. Thanks to Mike Awesemo for producing. Thank you all out there for being involved. This is a fully interactive show, and we appreciate you. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and take advantage of those links below at BetMGM as we continue. More content, more VODs, everything coming here on the Awesemo Odds channel, at JazzRazDFS, at Shander Show for me. Anything we left out? Take it away, my friend.
Not at all. Good luck tonight, my friends. See you guys soon.
Have a great night.